Hey guys, tonight we take a very slow, very uncomfortable walk through what might be the worst weekday of your life, an average Tuesday in ancient Rome. You're not a senator, not a noble, not even someone with a well-paying trade. No, you're just you, dropped unceremoniously into the middle of the empire armed with modern expectations and zero Latin. It's noisy, it's smelly, it's weirdly damp, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up disoriented, probably in an upper floor insula, one of those teetering Roman apartment buildings made of brick, wood, and blind optimism. The ceiling's cracked, the mattress is hay, the pillow is more sack of peas than anything remotely comforting. And before you can even remember where, or rather when you are, your senses are assaulted by the morning rituals of the neighborhood. First comes the rooster, not one, not two, but what sounds like a full feathered choir stationed along the rooftops. These are not your romantic countryside roosters. These ones are urban veterans. Loud, aggressive, and inexplicably angry at the sun. Then comes the real morning menace, the echoing splash of someone emptying their chamber pot into the alley below. Yes, you are reminded very quickly that indoor plumbing is for the elite, and even then, it's more a suggestion than a system. You sit up just in time to hear a shouted cave, the Roman version of heads up, followed by the unmistakable sound of, well, yesterday's contents hitting the cobblestones. You might think that's the worst of it, but the smell, oh, the smell lingers like an unwanted house guest. It's part vinegar, part ammonia, part ancient mushroom soup left in the sun. Even the walls smell tired. There's no snooze button, no cozy blanket burrito, just the squeak of straw under your hips and the gnawing realization that you have to get up or miss your bread ration. Not that it's much of a loss, the standard Roman breakfast, if you're not wealthy, is basically dry bread with a smear of garlic paste. Maybe an olive if you were lucky the night before. You step down the narrow, dangerously steep stairs that twist like a corkscrew through the tenement. These stairs were definitely not built for safety or shoes. You hear a crash somewhere below and someone muttering in Latin, hopefully not cursing you, though who knows. Romans were extremely superstitious before breakfast. Outside, the morning fog is already being chased off by the rising sun. You inhale deeply. Mistake. The air smells like a mix of fish market, baked urine, and wet sandstone. There's also the sharp tang of iron. A blacksmith 2 blocks down has clearly started work early. You pass a neighbor muttering a prayer to Mercury under his breath while tying up his sandals. He doesn't greet you. People here generally assume strangers are either cursed or thieves unless introduced by a trusted third party. Friendly, huh? As you shuffle along the stone pavement, slick with, well, something, you spot an old woman carefully lighting incense in front of a wall niche that houses her lares, those charming household spirits that are simultaneously endearing and terrifying. You nod respectfully, and she squints at you like you just insulted her goat. which, to be fair, you may have, hard to say with her Latin. Down the street, a group of schoolboys in togas slightly too big for them chant Virgil's Aeneid like they're summoning a demon. Their tutor, a cranky ex-slave, hits the wall rhythmically with a stick every time someone forgets a line. You whisper good luck and keep walking. Here's a fun thing. Historians still argue whether the average Roman really started their day this early, or if elite writers like Pliny were just projecting their own routines onto the masses. Either way, you're up with the sun, and that's non-negotiable. You round a corner and nearly trip over a sleeping dog, possibly feral, possibly owned, possibly some kind of ancient spirit guide. It doesn't move. You choose not to disturb it. That dog is probably having a better morning than you. From a window above, a child drops a handful of dried figs and shouts something that sounds like goat thief in your direction. You try to smile. It doesn't help. You're beginning to get the sense that Tuesdays in Rome don't care about your intentions. They just happen to you. And there, finally, is your destination, the local bakery. It's already got a small crowd, mostly women and servants lining up for panis quadratus, those square Roman loaves you've probably seen in museums. They're dense, slightly sour, and best consumed with either oil or deep existential resignation. You squeeze into line, stepping on someone's toga by accident. They don't say anything. They just glare, then mutter a small curse under their breath and cross themselves Roman style. You try not to take it personally, but also, you kind of do. Inside the bakery, it's hot, oven hot. Not in the cozy way, more in the every hair on your body is now lightly toasted way. The baker hands you your ration without looking. It's warm, which is the nicest thing that's happened to you all morning. You step outside, nibble the corner of the loaf, and oh, nope, still tastes like yesterday, possibly 2 yesterdays ago. You glance down at your tunic, which has acquired a mysterious new stain, possibly olive oil, possibly blood, possibly, okay, you stop thinking about it. So here you are, awake, bread in hand, covered in ancient grime, and the sun hasn't even fully risen. And somehow you still have to find a public toilet. You eye the bread again. It's heavy, dense, crumbly in a sad sort of way. It tastes like it was baked with the ghost of a raisin that never made it to the dough. Still, you chew mechanically because calories are calories and you haven't yet mastered Roman fasting. And then you realize you're thirsty, like, I just walked a mile across volcanic cobblestone in worn-out sandals. Thirsty. But there's no fridge, no filtered tap. Instead, you scan the street for a fountain, aqua if you're feeling fancy. Public fountains, or lacus, are your best hope. Rome's aqueduct system is impressive unless you're stuck on a street where the water pressure is more suggestion than science. You find one near the corner of a shrine to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, and honestly not helpful right now. The water trickles from a carved lion's mouth. You lower your head, sipping awkwardly, trying not to think about how many other people and possibly animals have slurped from the same spot. You tell yourself the water's clean. Kind of. Mostly. Probably. Romans took pride in their aqueducts, after all. But let's not pretend hydration fixes everything. You're still hungry, you're still exhausted, and most urgently, you still haven't used the bathroom. Now, in modern times, this would be a private affair. But in ancient Rome, oh no, forget doors, forget stalls, forget dignity. Using the bathroom here is a communal experience. You find the public latrine about 2 blocks down. It's built of stone, arranged in a curved bench, with evenly spaced holes cut out over a drainage system that occasionally works. You step inside. The air is wet, not just humid, emotionally wet. The kind of damp that seeps into your soul and makes you question your life decisions. Around you, a handful of men chat casually while doing their business. Someone's discussing chariot races. Another is complaining about grain prices. No one seems even remotely embarrassed. One man gestures enthusiastically with a sponge stick in hand. Yes, the famous tersorium, a communal cleaning implement soaked in vinegar water and passed down the bench like the world's most cursed baton. You freeze. Do you just sit? Do you wait for a spot? There's a certain choreography to it, clearly, and you haven't rehearsed. You pick the least terrifying seat and lower yourself, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. The stone is cold and oddly smooth. You now understand why Romans believed certain minor deities, like Cloacina, goddess of the sewer, were worth honoring. Honestly, she deserves a raise. Historians still argue whether sponge sticks were shared willy-nilly or whether individuals brought their own. In your case, you're handed one. You stare at it, it stares back. You whisper a tiny apology to your ancestors. Somehow you survive. You rise, you exit. You do not look back. You shuffle down the street in search of something, anything that might count as a real breakfast. But here's the thing. Romans didn't really do breakfast. Not in the way you're used to. Morning meals were either non-existent or depressing. If you were a noble, you might sip honeyed wine or nibble on some cheese while reclining dramatically. You, unfortunately, are still upright and still peasant adjacent. You spot a street vendor hawking what look like pancakes. Your heart flutters. But no, it's more like a barley mush fried into a shape and vaguely flavored with herbs. You try one anyway. It's warm, at least. Slightly chewy, possibly made yesterday. A boy walks past with a tray of what look like little sausages wrapped in fig leaves. Your mouth waters. He sneers at you. Clearly, you're not on his delivery list. Rich people only. And there it is again. That feeling that Rome is a city of layers. Social layers, architectural layers, smells that shouldn't be layers. You are very firmly on the bottom one. But the streets are stirring. People are shouting to one another from balconies, tossing laundry across alleyways like it's a casual sport. A man walks by with 2 chickens under one arm and a suspicious grin. You don't ask questions. You've learned. You pass a tiny temple tucked between buildings, barely the width of a hallway. Inside, a priest is already chanting to a minor god whose name you can't pronounce. He eyes you warily. You nod, trying to appear respectful. You probably just offended him by walking counterclockwise. Just then, a trumpet blares somewhere in the distance. Not a musical trumpet. This is a city horn. You stiffen. You don't know why, but the people around you do. Everyone begins to part like water, stepping aside to let a cohort of soldiers march through. Their armor gleams. Their sandals slap the pavement in eerie unison. You stare too long and one of them notices. He raises an eyebrow. You look away and pretend to be deeply invested in a crack in the wall. Your heart's racing, and for what? You haven't even done anything. But in Rome, standing around too long gets you noticed. Being noticed gets you questions. And questions, those get you fines. Or worse. So you move, not fast but steady. You duck into a shaded alley. One of those quiet lanes where old women sell herbs wrapped in cloth and half the cats in the district seem to hang out. You hear the clink of coins and a man whispering something about imported Spanish garum. You know better than to ask. A breeze passes through, lifting the smells, coriander, garlic, drying fish, and just a hint of sewage. You decide to think of it as earthy. You sit briefly on a stone ledge, trying to collect your thoughts. And that's when a child, barefoot, sticky-fingered, impossibly possessed, sprints by and steals the last third of your bread loaf. He vanishes around a corner before you can even yell. You stare at your empty hand. You laugh, a hollow, echoing laugh that probably alarms the nearby pigeon. This is your Tuesday morning in Rome. You've been awake for 2 hours. You've been urinated on by proxy, stared down by a centurion, and robbed by a child whose tunic didn't even reach his knees. And now the day is officially beginning. You're barely functioning, and yet nature calls again. Maybe it's the barley cake. Maybe it's the sheer stress of the morning. Maybe it's the distant trauma of sharing a latrine with 7 strangers and a vinegar-soaked sponge. But either way, you're going to need to do something unthinkable. Return. You trudge back to the latrine with all the joy of a condemned man. But this time it's full, not just with people, but with noise, laughter, shouting, even someone singing. Welcome to the Public Toilet Social Club. A man on the end of the bench greets you with a grin. He's missing 2 teeth and wears a tunic the color of weak mustard. Salve, he booms like you've just come back from war. Another waves his sponge on a stick like a baton. You can't tell if this is meant as a greeting or a threat. You perch on the edge of a warmish stone seat. Yes, warm. That means what you think it means. Next to you, 2 older men argue about gladiator taxes. Apparently, even Bloodsport has red tape. One insists the tax on imported sand for the arena is unjust. The other says his cousin once bribed a priest to get a better seat at the Colosseum. You nod slowly, pretending to understand, while internally wondering if any of this is happening or if you've developed fever hallucinations. One man pulls out a tiny wooden dice box. They begin to gamble. Here, mid-defecation. The dice clatter across the floor between their sandaled feet. One of them slaps the bench in triumph and shouts something involving Neptune and sheep. You don't ask. The entire latrine is built over a flowing stream, a basic but functional plumbing system. Romans were proud of their engineering, and rightfully so. But today the water seems sluggish. Maybe it's Tuesday. Maybe it's you. Someone to your left lights incense, either in honor of the gods or just to mask the odor, possibly both. You glance up and notice a small fresco painted above the archway. It shows Hercules defeating a lion with, curiously, a rather smug expression. Historians still argue whether these frescoes were religious tributes, artistic distractions, or crude inside jokes from ancient plumbers. Honestly, That last one feels right. As you exit, one man pats you on the back and tells you to stay strong. You're not sure if he means the day ahead or the digestive process. Back on the street, your tunic now carries the emotional weight of someone who's seen too much. You've joined an ancient brotherhood, one that shares more than just gossip. You're initiated now, and your soul will never be the same. You decide to walk it off. The form isn't far, and it's as chaotic as you imagined. The heart of Roman civic life, the forum is a swirl of voices, togas, deals, threats, and really suspicious-looking fruit carts. You pass a vendor selling what appears to be warm goat cheese on flatbread. You reach out just to touch it, and he slaps your hand away like you're a feral raccoon. Non gratis, he barks. Not free. You mumble something about bartering. He hurls a fig at your head. There's a crowd gathering near the Basilica Julia. You inch closer. Two men in fine white togas are locked in a heated argument. A crowd watches, not out of concern, but as though they've seen this play before. You catch words like inheritance, grain quota, and duel, followed by the name Gaius, said with great disgust. It's a civil trial, one of many that happen daily in this open-air chaos court. Roman law is detailed, loud, and oddly theatrical. The men argue so dramatically you half expect them to break into song. A scribe nearby scribbles notes furiously, while a bored-looking magistrate pretends to listen, clearly more interested in his lunch. You try to slip away quietly, but trip over someone's scroll bag. The owner, an elderly man with wild eyebrows, glares at you. You apologize. He asks if you've insulted Jupiter. You say no. He asks again, louder. You say definitely not. He storms off muttering about omens. A woman nearby gives you the sign against the evil eye. So now you're cursed and hungry. You find a corner of the forum to lean against, just for a moment. Nearby, a man in a worn brown cloak is preaching something about Saturn's return and the evils of goat-based currency. A small crowd humors him. One woman nods emphatically. Another offers a chicken bone in tribute. You're not sure if it's a cult or lunch theater. You watch as a group of children run by with wooden swords, smacking each other and yelling, Ave Caesar! You try to smile, but the sun's higher now, and your feet hurt. Someone behind you hisses your name, or what sounds like your name. Turns out it's just a guy hawking eel soup. You walk on past a bronze statue with a broken toe. Someone's draped a flower necklace around its neck, and a blind beggar with a monkey. The monkey is wearing a tiny helmet and aggressively collecting coins. You give it your last sestertius. It salutes you. Rome, you're beginning to realize, is a constant sensory war. Every minute feels like a test, and you are failing. You pause at a public notice board. Painted announcements, job offers, temple events, missing goat alerts. One parchment reads, looking for discreet cleaning boy. Must tolerate incense and nightmares. You consider it for half a second. Another notice offers a reward for anyone who can locate a missing bronze nose from a family bust. Sentimental value, it insists. You decide not to get involved. You keep walking. The air's thick now. The shade when you find it is barely cooler than the sun. You're sweating in new places. Romans didn't invent deodorant, and it shows. A man walks by with a tray of clay perfume pots, offering scents like Carthaginian dawn and emperor's musk. You inhale one. Immediate regret. Smells like vinegar and dead seaweed. You sit down again, this time on a low wall near a shrine to Janus, the god of beginnings, doors, and transitions. Fitting. You're hoping for all three. You whisper a quick prayer. Let me survive until noon. Janus doesn't answer, but a pigeon poops suspiciously close to your sandal. You take that as a yes. You peel yourself off the shrine ledge like an old sticker and rejoin the Roman street flow. Or try to, anyway. It's less a walk and more a daily battle against physics, poultry, and public indifference. You dodge a mule pulling a cart full of amphorae, each one sloshing ominously, and then a boy weaving through traffic with a live goose under each arm. They honk like they've seen things. You wonder briefly if this counts as cardio. The street is barely wide enough for a single cart, yet somehow there are three trying to pass, none willing to yield. The drivers shout at each other in Latin that doesn't sound appropriate for polite company. One of them hurls what may be a carrot. You duck. Every stone beneath your sandals is uneven, slick with something ancient and unforgiving. And you're not alone in noticing. An elderly man totters by holding a fractured sandal strap with one hand and a cabbage with the other. He looks directly at you and mutters something about the decline of architecture. You nod solemnly, very solemnly, like you too are deeply concerned about cobblestone standards in modern infrastructure. You finally break into a slightly wider boulevard, thinking, briefly, that things are looking up. That's when your foot lands in a puddle that is definitely not water. It's lukewarm. It's greenish. It has a smell that threatens your soul. You make the mistake of looking down and instantly regret it. A shopkeeper nearby chuckles. That puddle's been here since Caligula, he jokes. You force a smile. You are not okay. You make your way past rows of tabernae, Roman storefronts carved directly into the walls of larger buildings. They're barely wider than your wingspan, but bustling with life. One is selling dates, another is grinding garum, a third seems to be exclusively for left sandals. That one's busy. You pass a barber shop and briefly consider asking for a trim. The barber is sharpening a blade on what appears to be a hip bone. You keep walking. The midday crowd thickens. Rome's streets are strange beasts, part parade, part livestock pen, part accidental wrestling match. You're jostled by an olive merchant, brushed by a fishmonger with extremely damp sleeves, and nearly flattened by a woman carrying an entire roasted pig on a tray balanced atop her head. She doesn't blink. She is the moment. You try to step aside only to find yourself face to face with a street performer dressed as Bacchus, complete with fake ivy crown and suspiciously purple lips. He offers you a wine-soaked fig. You shake your head. He bows anyway. You are deeply confused. Now comes the real fun, crossing a Roman street. There are no stop signs, no painted lines, no rules, just momentum and prayer. You follow a group of locals as they dart between carts, ducks, and what looks like a man playing panpipes while riding a donkey. You almost make it until a runaway wheelbarrow nearly ends you. A bystander yanks you out of the way just in time. You thank him profusely. He asks for a tip. You give him your last remaining coin. He bites it, nods, and disappears into the chaos. At some point you realize it's loud. Not just city loud. It's layers of noise. Metal clanging from smiths, the rhythmic thunk of looms from cloth shops, the shout of vendors trying to outdo each other. One man literally yells, "I have bread," at the top of his lungs every 20 seconds. He is not even near a bakery. And then, out of nowhere, you smell something. Good? You follow your nose. Roasted chickpeas, honeyed nuts, possibly cinnamon. You inch closer to a food stall tucked behind a wall of ceramic masks. The vendor, a wide-eyed man with ink-stained fingers, is handing out small parcels wrapped in fig leaves. You point. He raises an eyebrow. You pay? You show your empty hand. He sighs, mutters something about tourists, and gives you half a parcel. It's warm, sticky, and shockingly tasty. You take one bite and nearly cry. The vendor watches you with a mix of pity and amusement. He gestures toward your feet. Watch for the cart, he says. You turn just in time to see a two-wheeled delivery wagon hurtling toward you. No horse, just a guy sprinting behind it, shouting about urgent scrolls. You leap out of the way. Your chickpea parcel is safe. That's what matters now. Somewhere behind you, a lute starts playing. Not well, but passionately. You pause at a street corner with a public message board and a tiny shrine to Mercury, god of travelers. A tiny clay statue holds a scroll. Someone's left a grape bunch beside it. You consider stealing one. You don't. Instead, you rest a moment. A welcome breeze picks up, carrying the scent of rosemary from a spice stall. You close your eyes. For one breath, it's almost peaceful. Then someone screams, "Fire!" in Latin. You open your eyes to see smoke billowing from a tenement rooftop 3 blocks down. The street erupts into activity. Buckets are grabbed. Shouts echo. Someone trips over a chicken. You consider helping, then remember you are 1. Broke, 2. Unarmed, and 3. Flammable. This, you realize, is just a normal Tuesday in Rome. Fire was so common that bucket brigades were semi-professional. Slaves, neighbors, even children formed human chains to pass water up ladders. Rome burned often and fast. The insulae, wood-heavy and crammed together, were notorious for going up like kindling. Nero gets a bad rap, but historians still argue whether citywide fires were caused by arson, lightning, or just poorly maintained cooking fires. Today's fire fizzles out quickly. Someone had dumped ash too close to a lantern. A relief. The crowd dissipates like smoke. You exhale. You wander toward a quieter alley to regroup. A cat eyes you from a ledge, tail flicking like a metronome. A jug rolls past. You don't ask why. From a balcony overhead, someone drops laundry and curses Jupiter. You duck just in time. A wet tunic lands beside you like a defeated flag. You sigh. You step back into the main thoroughfare and realize it's not even noon yet. You've survived market madness, chicken traffic, and a rogue wheelbarrow. But the day is far from over. Somewhere a bell tolls. A merchant yells about boiled snails, and a child throws a rotten fig at your shoulder. Welcome to Rome. The midday sun is unforgiving, perched high above the city like an angry Apollo, aiming rays directly at your forehead. Your tunic sticks to your back, your sandals squeak with each step, and you're fairly certain your shadow is trying to crawl into a fountain for safety. But onward you go, to the Forum, that chaotic heart of Rome's civic life. It's loud, crowded, and smells faintly of sweat, dust, and overripe pomegranates. You push through a knot of senators arguing over land tax reforms. They're wrapped in pristine white togas and wield wax tablets like weapons, gesturing dramatically with every syllable. You are once again reminded that in Rome, shouting is a sport. You try to avoid eye contact with anyone who looks too official, but it's tricky when most officials seem to look exactly like bored marble statues come to life. A man with a scroll approaches you. He seems important. You panic and duck behind a stall selling carved figurines of Jupiter doing various dramatic poses. The stall owner glares at you but says nothing. probably because he's too busy trying to glue a missing thunderbolt back onto one of his statues. As you sneak away, you hear a loud voice call out across the square, "Bring forth the accused." Now in Rome, justice isn't confined to courtrooms. Trials are public entertainment. You turn just in time to see a man in chains being marched up to a raised platform. His toga is filthy, his beard uneven, and he looks like someone who once lost an argument with a beehive. A magistrate, wearing the kind of scowl that suggests his sandals are too tight, begins rattling off charges: theft, blasphemy, goat endangerment. Okay, you're not sure about the last one, but there's definitely a goat involved somewhere. The crowd murmurs like it's intermission at a play. Some even bet on the outcome. You hear one guy mutter, "5 denarii says he gets exile." His friend replies, "Double if it's the mines." You edge away before the drama escalates. You're not looking to end up as part of someone's anecdote on the worst trials of 47 BCE. A couple of blocks over, the shouting continues, only now it's coming from a pair of clients arguing about their patron's latest conjurium, a public gift or handout, usually in the form of grain or a coin, or occasionally something as specific as salted fish. You gather that someone forgot to show up to the temple at the appointed hour and missed their share. There's arm waving. There's poetic Latin cursing. There's even a dramatic removal of a sandal. You, on the other hand, are mostly trying to find shade. It's noon. The paving stones are now radiant with the fury of 1,000 sun gods. You take shelter under the awning of a bookshop, which is more of a scroll cupboard run by a balding man who keeps shooing away pigeons with a twig. As you sit, catching your breath, a group of orators sets up nearby. Each one is determined to outshout the other about matters of state or honor, or why their uncle's land dispute with the olive vendor is actually a matter of national importance. One is practically foaming as he rants about military corruption, and the crowd loves it. Someone yells, "Speak it, Lucius," as though cheering for a chariot race. You wonder briefly if this counts as open mic night. A child tugs at your tunic. She offers you a bundle of wilted herbs wrapped in parchment. "Anti-fever," she whispers. You decline. She shrugs and runs off. You hope she's not part of a gang. You hope the herbs weren't a prophecy. As you cross the plaza, the crowd parts for a procession of lictors, those bodyguards of high magistrates, easily identified by the fasces, bundles of rods tied together with an axe in the middle. Symbolic, intimidating, also effective at clearing a path. You step aside just in time, narrowly avoiding being whacked by a swinging robe. Behind the lictors comes a magistrate, possibly a praetor or an aedile. You're not sure, but he looks like someone who owns more sandals than you have teeth. He surveys the crowd like a disappointed father looking at a messy bedroom. Then he moves on. You exhale. In the distance, you hear another announcement from the rostra, Rome's public speaking platform. A man in a stained toga is railing against foreign grain traders. "They ruin everything," he shouts. "The bread tastes like sand." The crowd boos. Someone throws a stale crust. You spot a familiar face near the statue of Romulus. It's the man who nearly ran you over with the scroll wagon earlier. He's now arguing with a woman selling mulled wine out of a bucket. You edge away. Rome is big, but somehow you keep running into the same people, like it's one giant sitcom. You head toward the Basilica Aemilia for shade. It's one of those grand marble buildings with rows of towering columns and a cool stone floor. Inside, people are lounging, striking business deals and occasionally pretending to be deeply invested in philosophy. You try to blend in by leaning on a pillar and nodding thoughtfully at no one in particular. A man beside you whispers, "He's late again?" You nod as if you've been waiting too. He sighs, "Always late, and always with bad news." You wonder who he is. Probably someone important, or a guy who sells wine with extra steps. Suddenly, you hear a clatter and a scream from outside. You rush to the edge of the portico and see a cart overturned in the street. Amphorae have shattered. Oil runs like molten gold down the gutter. A crowd gathers. Arguments begin immediately. "Who let him drive that cart?" "He's only 12. I told you it needed a second ox." "That amphora was from Hispania." "Where's the insurance scroll?" You back away. Rome is many things, but it's never dull. And just when you think things might be settling down, a priest in full ceremonial garb walks through the forum with a rooster in his arms and a bowl of blood balanced precariously on his head. He stops periodically to mutter blessings. People politely look the other way. You do too. You're beginning to understand that in Rome, everyone has their own logic, their own rhythm, their own version of Tuesday. Yours just happens to involve panic, sweat, confusion, and now a very real need for another nap. Too bad napping is a privilege of the wealthy. You stumble down a side street drawn by the scent of pine smoke and freshly poured vinegar. Your feet ache. Your brain buzzes. Somewhere behind you, someone is still shouting about a lost goat. You can't tell if the goat was noble or just very emotionally important. Rome does that to you, confuses you, exhausts you, and occasionally pelts you with citrus. You've landed at your job, or more precisely, at your assigned apprenticeship. You're under the tutelage of a man named Thallus, which may or may not be his real name. Thallus is short, hairy, and somehow always chewing on fennel. He speaks in a fast mix of Latin and Greek, both of which you understand just enough to know when he's insulting your posture, which is often. You work in what Thallus calls an import boutique. It's really a cramped, dark shop filled with random objects, North African beads, glass bottles of suspiciously thick perfume, and a whole shelf dedicated to decorative monkey skulls. None of them are labeled. All of them are for sale. Thallus insists it's very fashionable among senators' wives. Your job is unclear. Some days you sweep, other days you polish the imported bronze frogs. Today your task is apparently to sort goose feathers by length. You are not told why. You're only handed a basket and warned not to sneeze. As you sit on a cracked stool and try to remember what dignity used to feel like, Thallus scolds you for breathing too loud. Then he tells you to fetch the shop's mascot, a marmoset named Tiberius, from the rooftop. You hesitate. He shouts something about divine punishment. You climb. Tiberius, for what it's worth, is surprisingly well-groomed. His toenails sparkle, probably thanks to you. He gives you a look that says, "We're both trapped here," and you bond briefly before he throws a grape at your face and scampers away. You return to the shop empty-handed. Thallus shrugs and tells you to oil the clay jars instead. You pretend to understand. You do not. The jars are covered in a dust older than the Republic. You grab a rag and hope for the best. The shop receives exactly 2 customers in 3 hours. One is a woman with eyes like daggers who demands to see something cursed but tasteful. You hand her a small obsidian figurine shaped like a dolphin. She nods solemnly and leaves without paying. The other is a teenage boy looking for a gift that says, "I respect your gods, but not your father." You point him toward the incense shaped like lightning bolts. He seems satisfied. Around you, the air thickens. The shop's only window faces an alley where someone is boiling something fishy. You cough. Thallus throws a handful of crushed rosemary at your head. For purification, he claims. By early afternoon, your fingers are coated in oil, soot, and what might be squid ink. You excuse yourself to get more olive paste from a nearby vendor, mostly because you need to breathe. As you exit, you pass your rival, or at least Thallus calls him that. His name is Epicus, and he works for a rival shop that sells the real Eastern imports, which seems to mean he owns more feathers and wears nicer sandals. Epicus smirks every time he sees you. You nod politely. He flicks a pomegranate seed at your chest. You find the olive vendor asleep. His assistant hands you the wrong jar. You pretend it's the right one. Back at the shop, Thallus sniffs the paste, nods once, then tells you to feed it to the shop's guard turtle. You didn't know you had a guard turtle. Its name is Brutus, and it moves roughly as fast as Roman bureaucracy. You drop the olive paste on a flat stone. Brutus blinks slowly. You bow slightly just in case. Here's the thing. Roman work life wasn't all legions and chariot repair. Most people had bizarre, piecemeal jobs. Cobblers who doubled as ear cleaners, scribes who secretly sold gossip, and spice merchants who offered mild exorcisms on the side. Historians still argue whether this was due to economic necessity or just very flexible job descriptions. You sit again, trying not to slump. The shop feels like a sauna filled with expired perfume. You fan yourself with a scrap of papyrus advertising something called a genuine Egyptian love spell. Thallus tells you not to touch the display items. You tell him it was blowing away. He narrows his eyes and makes a note on a wax tablet. You're fairly sure he can't write. Outside, someone yells about mystic socks. You're too tired to look. Thallus finally dismisses you with a dramatic sigh and tells you not to bring any curses back from the forum. You nod, shuffle out, and trip over a chicken. The chicken is fine. Your dignity is not. You make your way down a slanted street where every fourth person seems to be carrying a fish or arguing with one. You pass a man selling colored sand in small bags. Therapeutic, he insists, made with sea whispers and goat dust. You do not engage. At the bottom of the street, there's a man playing a lyre very badly while standing on a barrel. His song is about a nobleman who fell in love with his own statue. A small crowd claps awkwardly. A child throws a fig. You throw him a weak smile. You round the corner and find yourself at a tiny square lined with food vendors and stray cats. You sit on a warm ledge, stretch your legs, and watch a mime try to imitate a drunk senator. The crowd roars, the mime winks at you. You look away quickly. And then, without warning, a man shouts, "Prophecy!" and starts spinning in circles while holding a chicken in one hand and a ladle in the other. You do not ask questions. You simply nod like it's all very reasonable. Rome is exhausting. You lie back on the warm stone, arms limp, eyes fluttering. A breeze drifts by, smelling of basil and regret. You wonder how the elite spend their afternoons, reclining on cushions, listening to flute girls, definitely not sorting feathers for a man who oils turtle shells. And you begin to dream of air conditioning, of headphones, of peanut butter toast. A dog barks nearby and wakes you up. It's still only the middle of the day. The sun now hangs like a heavy bronze shield, beating down with such authority that even statues seem to wilt under its weight. Your tunic clings to your back like a wet scroll, and your body hums with exhaustion. Surely you think, this is the part of the day when you nap. You know, midday break, siesta, quiet time, anything resembling mercy. But no, not for you. Because in ancient Rome, napping is a luxury. And luxuries, as you've probably figured out by now, belong to the elite. Senators and wealthy merchants? Absolutely. They're sprawled out right now on cushioned couches, sipping watered wine, enjoying figs so plump they practically hum lullabies. You? You're sitting on a cracked step that smells vaguely of vinegar and burned onion, sweating into your beltline. You try to shift into the shadow of a nearby column, only to discover it's already occupied by a snoring mule. You decide not to challenge it. Above you, a linen awning creaks in the breeze, half failed in its duty to shield the nearby tavern from the heat. Two men argue beneath it about politics, or gambling debts, or maybe both. One of them smacks the table with a fishbone. The other picks his teeth with a stylus. You stop trying to follow the conversation. You scan the street for other places to rest, anything soft or clean, or even just slightly less sun-scorched than your current perch. But the city offers no such comfort. Every ledge is hot, every wall sun-baked, every slab of stone practically sizzles under your fingertips. You are the world's saddest rotisserie chicken. And then you remember your insula, the apartment, the top floor oven you call home. You drag yourself there, step by aching step, dodging spilled wine, a small dog parade, and a man trying to sell garlic-stuffed snails to absolutely no one. The climb up to your flat is a cruel comedy. Steep stairs, tight corners, airless hallways. Halfway up, you consider making camp on the third-floor landing, but then a neighbor tosses breadcrumbs at you, mistaking you for a beggar. The pigeons descend with terrifying speed. You climb faster. At last, you push open your creaky wooden door and collapse on the floor. Not the mattress, it's too lumpy. The floor, at least, is cool stone. For now. You lie there, flat as a scroll, eyes half closed. There's a soft sound in the distance. Maybe someone playing a reed pipe. Maybe a neighbor arguing with a ghost again. You don't care. You're almost asleep when, crack, you jerk upright. A pot has fallen in the apartment below, or above, or somewhere. It's hard to tell. Sound travels weirdly in Rome's apartment blocks, and the walls are thin, very thin. You now hear what sounds like a domestic debate involving cheese theft, a broken sandal strap, and someone named Octavia who may or may not be cursed. A baby begins to cry. A dog starts barking. A flute player starts practicing. You roll over and scream gently into your elbow. Historians still argue whether lower-class Romans had predictable daily rhythms or simply endured a non-stop swirl of chaos. Judging by your current experience, the answer is yes. You finally give up and sit upright, back against the wall. The sun has shifted just enough to blind you through a crack in the shutters. You throw your sandal at it, miss with great effort. You rummage through a corner basket and find half a fig and a dried apricot. You nibble them slowly, like they're some sort of dessert, which honestly, they kind of are. Outside your window, a man is whistling. He's not good at it, but he's enthusiastic. You try to match his tune, then stop because it sounds like you're being strangled by a parrot. Your room smells like a mix of candle wax, damp linen, and feet. You open the shutter for air. Big mistake. The wave of outside heat punches you in the face like an angry sun god. You slam it shut again and whisper an apology to your nose. You lie back down, determined to rest. You wake up 10 minutes later, sweaty and confused, to the sound of someone throwing amphorae out of a window 2 buildings over. A woman shouts something about betrayal and bad barley. You decide to stop asking questions about anything ever again. Eventually you rise, slowly, like a statue reluctantly deciding to stretch. You splash your face with water from a clay jug that's warmer than you hoped. Still, it helps. Kind of. Not really. You change your tunic, meaning you turn it inside out and pretend that counts. It doesn't. But at this point, neither do you. Your stomach growls again, loudly, like a lion that skipped breakfast and now wants to eat you out of principle. You head back downstairs, this time faster, mostly because you've accepted that rest is not coming for you today. You pass a neighbor chanting softly while dabbing olive oil on her doorway. You nod. She doesn't look up. You assume she's protecting the home from evil spirits, debt collectors, or possibly both. Outside, the light is golden and harsh. Afternoon Rome is the same as morning Rome, just dustier and sweatier. You make your way through the crowd, bumping shoulders, dodging elbows, and trying not to step in anything squishy. You pause by a fountain again. This time, a group of children has filled it with flower petals and fish guts. You don't ask. A vendor offers you a cup of warm goat milk. You decline. He seems offended and mutters something about modern youth. You resist the urge to scream. You pass another tavern where people are napping, reclined, fanned, and blissfully horizontal. Probably equestrians, possibly minor nobles. You stare at them longingly, like a starving poet watches bread rise. You glance at the sky. It's still early afternoon. You have done nothing productive. You have accomplished no tasks. And yet, somehow, you feel like you've lived 3 entire lives today. Rome is winning. You've sweat through 2 tunics, earned 5 new blisters, and are now roughly 80% humidity by volume. There's only one solution left. One sacred Roman tradition that promises temporary relief and possibly social confusion. The public bathhouse. You've heard tales, marble pillars, hot pools, heated floors, elegant mosaics of dolphins doing questionable things with sea nymphs. But no tale has prepared you for what this experience actually is. Organized chaos, but wet. The Thermi complex looms before you like a temple of steam and shouts. It smells of eucalyptus, feet, and ambition. You pay a small fee to the sweaty, bored Atriensis at the door, a sort of bathhouse gatekeeper, and he gives you a thin wooden token and a look that says, "Good luck, meatbag." You step inside and you are immediately hit with a wall of warmth and human noise. Laughter, splashing, arguments about taxes, a man loudly describing his rash. It's all happening, all at once, nakedly, because yes, everyone is naked, proudly, confidently, gloriously. You, meanwhile, are trying to remember if there's a graceful way to undress in front of 40 strangers while holding a suspiciously dry sponge and pretending you belong. There isn't. You shuffle toward the appetiterium, the changing room. Stone benches line the walls. Hooks for clothing hang between faded frescoes of muscular mythological figures doing things that would definitely get your video demonetized. You undress quickly, awkwardly. You tuck your belongings into a cubby. There's no lock. You stare at it for a moment, then kiss your sandals goodbye just in case. A boy hands you a pot of oil and a blunt scraping tool called a strigil. You accept them like cursed gifts. You step through a darkened archway in the tepidarium, the warm room. Steam curls through the air like lazy ghosts. The floor is heated from below, Hipparchos style, by fires tended in the basement by men you'll never see. It's warm, yes, but also incredibly moist. You sit on a low bench next to a man whose eyebrows are thicker than his towel. He nods at you and proceeds to describe a recent goat auction in full, steamy detail. Eventually, you shuffle to the caldarium, the hot room. This is sauna plus. The air presses down on you like an angry cloud. Your nostrils burn slightly. You're sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. A man pours hot water over himself, sighing dramatically. Another splashes into a marble pool and lets out a yelp that echoes like a wounded dolphin. You dip 1 foot in, instantly regret it. But peer pressure is real. You inch in, grimacing like you're in a live eel tank. Once submerged, you do feel calmer, sort of, warm, floaty, detached from your worries. Also from your body, which is now the consistency of cooked pasta. You glance around. Every surface gleams with condensation and skin oil. Men chat about politics, gladiator schedules, wine prices, and which general is most cursed. One man is trying to sell what he claims is authentic Germanic shampoo. It's goat fat and rosemary. No one is convinced. A boy walks by holding a tray of sweetened dates and slices of pickled turnip. You look longingly, but you're not in that social tier. Not even close. Suddenly, a loud whistle blows. It's the bath's version of Clear the Lane. A muscular man barrels through the pool like Poseidon with purpose, doing something that might be a proto-breaststroke. Everyone gives him space. You do too. You move on to the frigidarium, the cold plunge. You've heard the stories. It's meant to close the pores, shock the system, make you feel alive. You dip your toe in. It is the temperature of betrayal. You make a noise. Not a word. A noise. Half gasp, half ancient Latin curse. The old man beside you cackles. You lower yourself in, inch by agonizing inch. Your organs retreat into your ribcage for warmth. You feel everything and nothing all at once. But also, you don't smell like disappointment anymore. So progress? After the plunge, you stagger back into the tepidarium to collect your thoughts. Someone hands you oil. You apply it like lotion. Then you use the strigil to scrape the oil and the accumulated grime of a full Roman Tuesday off your body. It makes a sound that should not be heard in polite society. You feel marginally cleaner, also vaguely like a well-polished roast chicken. You return to the changing room. Your sandals are still there. Your tunic is damp somehow, even though no one touched it. You put it on anyway. You are now both clean and resigned. Outside the bathhouse, the sun is a little lower. The light is golden, the streets slightly quieter. You feel calmer. Not happy, not energetic, just less like your soul is being slowly baked into your kneecaps. You sit on a nearby bench and take a long breath, and that's when you notice the sandal, floating in the gutter, alone, upright, staring at you. You feel deeply existentially disturbed. Someone behind you says, "That's an omen." You don't ask for what. Here's a fun tidbit. Romans treated bathhouses as social hubs, not just hygiene centers. Friendships were formed there, business deals struck, even poetry shared. Historians still argue whether these places truly brought different classes together or just gave everyone a space to collectively ignore the heat. Either way, you're glad you went. even if you'll never recover from the image of three elderly men racing rubber figs across the steam pool while singing bawdy odes to Venus. You rise and begin to walk again, clean, relaxed, slightly traumatized, ready for the next chapter of your terrible Tuesday, which unfortunately involves dinner and possibly a man dressed as Dionysus trying to get you drunk. You shuffle toward the dinner gathering like a man headed into mild battle. Your skin is still soft from the bathhouse scrape down, but your nerves are frayed from, well, everything else. Rome has a way of taking what little optimism you have and politely trampling it with a goat cart. You're not heading to a domus, mind you. No sprawling villa with columns and harp music for you. You've been invited, well, summoned is more accurate, to a dinner hosted by your patron, a wealthy man with an unfortunate mustache and a deep fondness for reciting his own poetry. He expects you to show up, nod a lot, and laugh at all the wrong moments. In exchange, you might get bread, wine, and possibly a boiled egg. You arrive outside his home, a modest but respectable urban house with painted gods glaring at the doorway. The doorman eyes you like you're carrying plague, then shrugs and lets you in. The air smells of smoke, garum, and that one too strong perfume every Roman seems to overuse. The atrium is buzzing. Clients, minor officials, maybe a distant cousin or two. They all mingle, talking loudly, laughing too hard, and trying not to look bored. You recognize none of them, which is good, because it means you've offended no one yet. Then he appears, your patron, Gaius Flavius something or other. No one remembers his full name because he insists on being called Flav, which sounds less like a nobleman and more like a street snack. He greets you with an oily smile and immediately tells you how stressful his day has been, mostly because his favorite wine boy called in sick. You're ushered into the triclinium, the dining room. Low couches arranged in a U-shape surround a small, slightly tilting table. You're seated on the far side, the client corner, also known as where the food arrives last and the jokes go to die. The scene begins. First course, boiled eggs, cheese, olives, and something brown that might once have been a mushroom. The wine is already flowing, and it's been watered down to somewhere between weak tea and grape-scented sadness. You sip it anyway. Across from you, a man with aggressively styled hair begins reciting a poem about volcanic ash and unfaithful birds. You pretend to listen while trying not to choke on an olive pit. Your patron laughs, too loudly, too long, then tries to repeat the last line himself and gets the bird species wrong. No one corrects him. Then comes the real food, or something that claims to be. Platters arrive with roasted dormice stuffed with pine nuts, honey-glazed turnips, and a pie that smells suspiciously like fermented eel. You don't ask, you just chew. The dormouse is crunchy. That's all you can say. It is undeniably crunchy. You glance around. Others eat with gusto, licking fingers and burping with mild pride. A man near the host performs a dramatic toast, quoting Horace while gesturing with a pickled onion. Someone drops a goblet. No one notices. Here's something you might not know. Wealthy Romans used dinner parties as status rituals. Every detail, who sits where, what dish is served when, how long the host monologues, was a statement. Historians still argue whether the typical cena was truly about food or just elaborate theater with meat. In your case, it's mostly an endurance test. The conversation turns to politics, then to gladiators, then to a lengthy debate about whether imported peacock feathers bring bad luck. The man beside you claims his cousin's garden caught fire after receiving a feather fan from Alexandria. You nod solemnly and take a bite of what you hope is bread. It's not, it's cheese, but spiced, with something unidentifiable and possibly floral. Dessert arrives. Candied figs, dates soaked in wine, and tiny honey cakes shaped like dolphins. One man eats 12. Another one tries to juggle 3 and is promptly escorted out. You quietly pocket a fig for later. It may be your only victory today. Then the entertainment begins. A boy walks in, dressed as the god Dionysus, ivy crown, fake beard, and an expression that says he'd rather be anywhere else. He stumbles dramatically, flings a scarf over his shoulder, and launches into a wine-fueled monologue about the joys of excess. This apparently is a comedy. The audience laughs. Your patron roars with delight and claps off beat. The boy Dionysus downs a goblet, belches, and starts singing a hymn about satyrs. Half the guests join in. You clap politely, unsure whether this is satire or a very dedicated warning against hangovers. Then come the toasts. Each man must stand, raise a cup, and say something vaguely clever about love, war, or digestion. The man 2 spots over offers a poem about his ex-wife and a cursed cabbage. People applaud. You are next. You stand. You say something about enduring the heat of Rome with the coolness of friends. It's met with a few chuckles and a cough that might have been a laugh. You sit down. Your cup is refilled. You instantly regret everything. Eventually, things wind down. People recline deeper into their cushions. A man begins snoring softly. Another is trying to coax a lizard out of his wine bowl. You consider escaping, but your patron catches your eye and waves you over. He wants to share a special wine with you. It's cloudy, smells like raisins left in a gym sock, and burns slightly on the way down. He leans in and tells you about his business idea, something about exporting Roman sandals to Gaul. You nod. He falls asleep mid-sentence. You take this as your cue to exit. Outside, the air is blessedly cooler. The stars peek out. Your stomach gurgles ominously. You survive the cena. Barely. You still taste dormouse, and possibly onion. And somehow, the night is still young. You shuffle away from the dinner like someone escaping a very polite kidnapping. The streets are quieter now, lit by oil lamps flickering in the breeze, and the occasional torch clutched by a night watchman who's definitely being paid in salted fish. Your stomach feels strange. Not bad exactly, just confused. Like it's not sure which part of the dinner to digest first, or whether to simply stage a rebellion. You take the long way home, mostly to walk off the wine and maybe the sense of existential regret tied to crunchy dormouse. The stone streets gleam faintly, still radiating the day's heat. You pass a street corner where someone has chalked, "Lucia is unfaithful," in crude Latin. You wonder how many Lucias there are in this city and whether any of them deserve it. The alley narrows. You duck beneath a wooden beam. To your left, a man is humming and feeding grapes to a ferret. No one questions this. It's Rome. As you round the bend near a decrepit well, something whooshes past your ear. A tile. From a rooftop. It shatters on the stone beside you with a crack that feels louder than thunder. You freeze, then look up. Nothing. Just shadow, a few open windows. Maybe a cat judging you from a ledge. You take a cautious step. Another tile lands 10 feet ahead of you. Welcome to one of Rome's lesser-known survival challenges. Deadly falling objects. Roof tiles, pots, even chamber pots. Gravity is not your friend here. The city's upper floors are shoddy at best, and high winds, careless servants, or bored children often turn them into vertical assault zones. There were actual laws about this. If something fell from your window and injured or killed a passerby, you were liable. Unless, of course, the gods were blamed. Then everyone just lit some incense and moved on. You hug the wall as you walk, now moving in the shadow of buildings like a spy in a tunic. Each overhanging window becomes a potential threat. You flinch at the sound of pottery clinking. A pigeon flaps by and you almost dive for cover. A man steps out of a doorway and you yelp. He yelps back. You both apologize and move on. Eventually, you reach a wider street. Safer. For now, you pause under a public colonnade to catch your breath. A dog sniffs your sandal. A drunk man nearby tells it to vote for Cicero. You close your eyes and wonder if maybe you hallucinated the tile. Then you notice a small sign nailed to a post. Beware of tiles. The gods do not forgive foolish walking. Comforting. You keep going, passing a fountain where someone has stuck a wig onto a lion head. It's unclear whether it's a prank, an offering, or performance art. Probably all three. The air grows thicker as you near the Subura district, Rome's bustling, unruly maze of shops, taverns, brothels, and regrettable decisions. A group of musicians huddle around a brazier, playing a jaunty tune that sounds like three flutes in a fight. Children dash past, chasing a hoop. One nearly takes out your knee. You wobble like a wounded senator, but manage to stay upright. Further down, two men are mid-argument over whose turn it is to guard the communal laundry line. One is holding a sock like a dagger. You sidestep and give them space. Rome at night isn't quiet, it just changes flavor. The chaos softens but never stops. It becomes less shouts, more murmurs, less carts, more cats. It's a different kind of alive, sleepy, but suspicious. You spot a vendor still open, hawking leftover honey cakes and fried chickpea balls. You stare at the cakes. They stare back. One has a tiny bite missing. You consider it. You don't trust it. As you pass, the vendor nods at you and says, "Careful, a tile nearly got me earlier." You nod grimly. Tile solidarity. You duck into a side street that cuts through a block of residential flats. It's quieter here. The clatter of sandals on stone, the low rustle of laundry in the breeze, the smell of something, maybe lentils, maybe sorrow, wafting from an open window. A woman upstairs sings a lullaby. It's soft, haunting. You don't understand the words, but you feel them in your bones. Then, a loud crash from the next alley over. Not a tile this time. Something larger. A barrel, a body. You don't investigate. That's how you end up in someone else's story. You pick up the pace. You reach your building and glance upward. No one at the window. No ominous creaking. You sprint the last few steps and dive inside. Made it. Inside, it's stuffy and dark, but it's home. Sort of. You light a small oil lamp and set it by the doorway. You do a quick check of your possessions. A mostly empty water jug, a fig pit, and one sandal that no longer fits right. Riches. You sit on your sleeping mat and exhale. Then from somewhere outside, the sound of another tile crashing. You lie down slowly. Rome isn't trying to kill you. Not really, just everything in it is. You try to settle in. Truly you do. But peace in Rome is a fragile thing. Less like a blanket, more like a napkin in a hurricane. Your mat creaks beneath you. The clay walls radiate the day's leftover heat like a passive-aggressive oven. You shift once, twice, then a third time. before resigning yourself to the fact that your sleeping position will be mildly twisted pretzel tonight. You close your eyes. You try breathing deeply, slowly. You count sheep. Then you realize sheep in ancient Rome were usually missing by now, and someone would definitely steal them if you left the gate open. So much for that. Then the noise begins. First, dogs. A chorus, barking like they're auditioning for a Roman tragedy. One starts, then another joins in, then they all lose their collective canine minds in the alleyway below. You peek out the shutter and see nothing, just shadows and teeth. Next, neighbors. Upstairs, the couple is at it again, shouting about, what is it this time? A misplaced amulet? Someone burned the lentils? One of them shouts, "You never respected my household gods," and slams something heavy. You imagine a statue of Venus flying across the room and sigh. Below, someone's cooking something very fishy. You know because the scent is now inside your nose, your hair, and possibly your soul. You try not to breathe through your nose. You fail. Then comes the chanting. It starts softly, a single voice, then another, then a drum. You sit upright. Across the courtyard, a group has gathered in a semicircle around a woman waving what looks like fennel and muttering in a mix of Latin and something older, wilder. She's mid-exorcism. You recognize the signs. Open fire, salt line, a man convulsing suspiciously while clutching a chicken. Classic signs. You watch as she sprinkles wine on the doorstep and shouts at what appears to be a cursed ladle. The neighbors don't interfere. One actually passes her a small bundle of herbs through the window. Rome is nothing if not supportive of late-night spiritual maintenance. Here's a curious thing. Domestic superstition was more than just background noise. Romans believed deeply in household spirits, Lares, Penates, Lemures, and these beings required regular attention. If your cupboard creaked, if your grain spoiled, if your cat walked backwards, it was probably a ghost, or a curse, or that one neighbor who never smiled. Historians still argue whether these nightly rituals were truly religious or just an early form of communal group therapy. Across the way, a man begins arguing with the exorcist mid-ritual. Apparently, she forgot to cleanse the stairwell last time. She responds by throwing a handful of ash at him. He screams and runs back inside. You applaud silently. Then, because Rome is allergic to boredom, a man in the next apartment begins playing the panpipes. Badly. You suspect he's drunk or cursed, possibly both. His rendition of Ode to the Harvest sounds like a goat attempting jazz. Someone yells, "Play something with fewer bees," and the tune screeches to a halt. You try to lie back down, but now your pillow is damp, not wet, just damp enough to feel weird. You flip it over. It's also damp on the other side. You give up. Suddenly, someone knocks at your door. You freeze. No one knocks in Rome unless they want something, or they've mistaken you for someone who owes them money. You hesitate. The knock comes again, softer this time. You crack the door. It's your neighbor, a boy around 10, barefoot, wide-eyed, and holding a dead rat by the tail. "Is this your recovery?" he asks. You blink. He shrugs and drops it on your step before scampering off. You close the door. You stare at the rat. You slide it gently into a bucket. It's fine. Everything's fine. You try sleeping again, this time with a small cloth over your face to muffle the sounds. It doesn't work. The cloth smells like vinegar. You remove it. The dogs have stopped barking at least. But now a man is shouting, "Fire!" in the next block. Not because there's a fire, but because he's selling firewood. You almost respect the hustle. Somewhere above, a toddler begins screaming the word fig repeatedly. You count each shout like sheep. By fig 12, you're ready to move into a cave. A breeze wafts in through the shutter. You close your eyes. You imagine silence, a soft bed, a world without cursed ladles. Then a new sound, faint at first but unmistakable, the low, rhythmic clomp of sandals on stone. You peek out. It's the vigils, Rome's night watch, part fire brigade, part neighborhood patrol, part exhausted men with sticks. They walk in pairs, swinging lanterns and muttering about that one alley again. One of them stops to poke at the exorcist's leftover fire with his staff. The other yawns so loudly you feel it through to the wall. They move on. You lie back again. The neighbor's cat slinks across your window ledge and hisses at something unseen. You try not to interpret it as an omen. You curl into yourself, pulling your rough blanket tighter. You think about home, wherever home is now, a place with fewer pipes, fewer omens, fewer pipe players. You finally drift, for approximately 7 minutes. Then a new neighbor, a man with what can only be described as thunder lungs, starts yelling about taxes, not in the morning, not to an official, just yelling into the void. "Why do I pay for pipes that do not flow?" he cries. "Where's the water, Gaius?" You consider yelling back, but that would make you part of it. Instead, you whisper to your ceiling, "Please, just 30 minutes of silence. That's all I need." In response, a pigeon lands directly above you and lets out a single violent coo. Rome hears your plea and declines. Morning would be a mercy if it ever actually arrived. But in Rome, night doesn't so much end as it slowly, grumpily transitions into a new flavor of chaos. You finally drift into something resembling sleep, a shallow, twitchy puddle of rest, when someone down the hallway starts singing. It's not a good song. It has no tune. It mostly sounds like a man trying to exorcise his own hiccups through interpretive warbling. You sit up, bleary-eyed and defeated, and blink into the dark. Is this revenge for yesterday? Is it still Tuesday? Are you still real? Your body aches. Your blanket has become a damp rope, and the air smells faintly of figs and regret. You stagger toward the doorway for some air and immediately regret it. The hallway is full, not of people, of smoke. Someone has lit a brazier right in the middle of the landing. Around it, 3 elderly women wrapped in shawls, one holding a chicken, another muttering into a bowl of milk, and the third whispering to a wax figurine. You freeze. They don't acknowledge you. You are not their audience. You are simply one more element in the background of their ritual. You back away, slowly, carefully. Slam. A door opens. A man in a toga with a burnt hem stumbles into the corridor, looks at you, looks at the smoke witches, says, "Oh no, not again," and disappears down the stairs. You return to your apartment and pretend that didn't happen. Then the rooster starts. Of course, because nothing signals it's still the middle of the night, but try anyway, like a bird screaming into the void from 3 rooftops away. You cover your ears. He screams louder. You respect his commitment. Then comes the soft knock. Again? You peek through the shutter. This time it's a tax collector. Yes, at this hour. He stands with a torch, a scroll, and the expression of a man who enjoys the exact amount of power he holds. No more, no less. You open the door a crack. "Name?" he asks. You give it, carefully, slowly, as if it might bite. "Do you own any chickens?" he asks. You blink. "No." "Do you rent any?" he asks. You pause. No. Do you benefit from any chickens? You don't know what this means. You shake your head. He sighs, writes something, and mutters about census irregularities. Then he looks up. Do you have pipes? Do I? What? Water pipes? Do you draw from public aqueducts? You want to say, I barely draw breath. Instead, you mumble, I have a jug. He writes again. Pipes are taxable. Jugs may be reviewed. He leaves. You stare at the wall. The wall stares back. It's made of mud brick and secrets. You hear someone arguing downstairs. Two voices now louder. One of them insists he owns the stairs. The other says the stairs were a gift from Mercury. You roll your eyes so hard it counts as exercise. You try to rest again, but now your mind is spinning. Taxes, pipes, chicken-related accusations. Welcome to the Roman tax code, a labyrinth of logic, penalties, and genuinely baffling specificity. Historians still argue whether Roman taxation was designed to fund the empire or simply to ensure no citizen ever truly relaxed. Just then, you remember a story your neighbor told you once about a man fined for using too much shade. He stood under another man's balcony for too long and was charged for obstructing sunlight flow. At the time, you laughed. Now you believe it. You crawl back to your mat and breathe. But the peace doesn't last, because now they've returned. The chanting women. You hear the scraping of feet in the hallway, the clink of a ladle, a whisper that ends in a hiccup. You peek out and see a trail of herbs leading to your neighbor's door. Someone's drawn a chalk circle and filled it with ash. In the center, a small idol with a dented nose. You shut your door, hard, and then you wait. 15 minutes pass. Nothing. 20 minutes. Stillness. You almost relax. Then the knock comes again. You don't answer. You lie flat on your mat, willing the universe to move on. Finally, the sky begins to lighten. Not brightly, just enough for the stars to fade and the rooftops to lose their edge. A dove coos. A cart creaks in the distance. Somewhere, a street cleaner begins sweeping up the results of last night's bad decisions. You sit up, groggy, gritty-eyed, somehow more tired than before you slept. You open the shutter. The sky is bruised purple. The first of the bread sellers trudges down the road, cart wobbling, voice hoarse as he cries, "Panis! Panis! Still warm if you hurry!" You smile faintly. You don't know why. Then you step outside and slip on the dead rat from earlier, of course. You pick yourself up from the stone floor with the grace of a toppled amphora. The rat rolls gently to the side like it, too, has had enough of this day. Your tunic is now graced with a streak of something that may be soot, maybe rat grease, maybe some unholy combination of both. You decide not to analyze it. You're sore. You're sticky. You're wearing a smell like roasted regret. And it's still barely dawn. You make your way back to the Forum District. Not out of choice, but because a notice was plastered to your building last week, demanding every tenant appear before the district census scribes, or risk fines, lashes, or, worse, administrative backlog. You'd rather face lions than Roman paperwork. At least lions are quick. The streets are waking up. A woman sweeps her doorstep, muttering a prayer to her household lares. Two boys are arguing over a clay dice game while a goat eats one of their belts. The baker's already at work, tossing loaves into a yawning oven, with the efficiency of a man who has given up on conversation. You pass a man walking backward while holding a mirror. Some sort of protection spell, probably. You don't ask. You arrive at the census station, a temporary wooden booth guarded by a scribe who looks exactly as tired and judgmental as you imagined. His wax tablet is worn smooth on one side, and his stylus clicks like a threat. Name? He asks, not looking up. You give it. Occupation? You pause. Apprentice, feather sorter. Sometimes. He raises an eyebrow, still not looking. How many members in your household? You start counting on your fingers. Me, Tiberius the marmoset, the turtle. Do they count? They do not count. You nod quickly. Just me then. Do you own any slaves? You laugh. The wrong kind of laugh. The please don't ask follow-up questions kind. He frowns. No sense of civic responsibility. He scribbles something. Do you possess land, vessels, or livestock? You shake your head. I possess a sandal and a moral hangover. He blinks once. Do you rent pipes? You stare. We've been over this. Everyone says that. He makes a final flourish on the tablet, then stamps your forearm with a blob of blue paste. You're cleared for this year. Don't move cities. Don't change occupations. Don't anger the gods. You nod. Understood. And don't feed the tax inspectors, he adds, deadpan. They'll never leave. You slink away. Your blue-stamped arm now feels like a curse. People glance at it with mild disdain, as if you've just walked out of a bad comedy performance. Which, to be fair, is exactly how life in Rome feels most of the time. You head toward the public fountain to rinse your hands. There's already a line. A man in front of you insists on blessing each scoop of water with a whispered prayer. The woman behind you clicks her tongue and taps her jug impatiently. You, caught between superstition and impatience, just smile vaguely at the wall. When it's finally your turn, you splash your face and drink deeply. The water tastes metallic, a little mossy, but blessedly cool. You're mid-sip when a tax official rounds the corner. You freeze, lips dripping. He looks directly at you. You try to disappear into the stone. You, he says, striding over. You blink. Me? He gestures to your stamped arm. Did you file the poultry declaration? The... what? He sighs with the weariness of a man who's asked this question 300 times today. If any poultry or feathered livestock have passed through your dwelling, ownership is not required. You must complete Form 47B, Feathered Proximity Statement. You try to explain the marmoset, the feather sorting, the pigeon that briefly nested in your shutter last month. He interrupts. Animal cohabitation is outside my jurisdiction. I'll mark you as pending. You receive a second stamp, this one red, and a scroll with 14 questions, including, has any fowl observed your eating space within the previous 8 lunar phases? You decide definitively that the next chicken you see will be screamed at. The tax official nods once and vanishes around a corner like a bureaucratic wraith. You crumple onto a bench near the forum, clutching your scroll, your sandals sticking out at a weird angle, your self-respect on hiatus. Around you, Rome continues as if it's perfectly normal to interrogate people at fountains about poultry. A mime performs nearby, miming the struggles of a man trying to juggle scrolls and feed ducks. It's eerily relatable. A child offers you a date stuffed with something. You decline. He eats it and immediately starts hiccuping. You turn to leave the forum and immediately walk into a cart full of beeswax. Watch it, the vendor barks, catching a jar just before it falls. Sorry, you mumble. He glares. This wax is for Saturnalia candles. Do you want Saturn himself to be offended? No, you say. No, I really don't. You flee. Halfway back to your insula, you're stopped by another official. Not a tax man this time, a tithing officer from the local temple. He demands to know if you've made your monthly offering to the shrine of Bonadea. You think back. You definitely lit incense last week. Or was that to Placenta, goddess of crusts? You tell him you're planning to make an offering this evening. He nods. Make sure it's not stale. Then he hands you a small icon of the goddess. It's poorly carved. Probably cursed. You accept it anyway. Your tunic is now half soaked, your arms stamped in two colors, and you're carrying an icon of a deity you don't really understand. You are the walking embodiment of bureaucratic fatigue. Rome is many things: epic, poetic, immortal. But efficient is not one of them. Historians still argue whether this web of tax, tithe, and ritual was meant to organize the city or simply keep everyone too busy to riot. You suspect it's both. You reach your door. Your blue stamp is smudging. Your red stamp is still sticky. Inside, Tiberius the marmoset eyes you with mild judgment. You hold up the scroll. Don't ask. He throws a grape at your face. Fair enough. You collapse onto your mat like a toppled column, scroll still clutched in one hand, red ink bleeding onto your fingers like some bureaucratic wound. Tiberius snatches the icon of Bonadea and scurries off with it, possibly to add it to his shrine of stolen spoons and crusts. You don't chase him. If anything, you envy him. At least the marmoset gets to nap between crimes. You lie there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what your life has become. Your muscles ache from stair climbing. Your brain aches from poultry questions. Your soul aches from being yelled at by every single god's representative, mortal and spectral, before the sun even hit its peak. But there's one thing you haven't done today. Pray to the household gods. You groan, roll over, and shuffle toward the corner shrine carved into the wall. It's a small niche lined with soot and soot-adjacent substances. Two little clay figures sit inside. Your Larrys, guardians of the home. One's missing a hand. The other has acquired a fashionable soot mustache. Between them rests a shriveled offering of dried chickpeas you forgot to change out last week. Or last month. Hard to say. You light a bit of incense. The flame sputters like it's reconsidering its purpose. Smoke curls upward, then sideways, then into your left eye. You clear your throat. "O sacred household spirit," you begin, trying to sound confident and reverent despite looking like you've wrestled a cart and lost. Thank you for not letting any more roof tiles hit me, or plagues, or actual fires. So far. You pause. Sorry about the fig I cursed under my breath earlier. That was heat stroke talking. You bow awkwardly, then place the last half of your breakfast, an ancient date, between the clay statues. One of them immediately topples over into it. You prop it back up and pretend that's a blessing. As you finish, you hear a thump behind you. You turn around to find your neighbor standing at your open doorway. He's holding a small jar of olives and wearing an expression like he's just walked in on something illegal, but unimpressive. "I brought these," he says, "to apologize for the incident." "What incident?" "The rooster. From this morning. It's mine. It escaped. Again." You nod slowly. You know it woke up half the insula. "It woke up half the district," he corrects. "But here, peace offering." You accept the jar. It smells salty, possibly cursed. He lingers in the doorway. "You've got 2 stamps," he observes, eyeing your ink-streaked arm. You sigh. "One for being alive, one for being near a chicken." He nods thoughtfully. They got me for incense proximity last month. Left my tunic in the temple laundry. You blink. There's a temple laundry? Unofficial, he says, and then leaves. You sit down, jar in lap, unsure if you should eat the olives or bury them under your floorboards as protection against future tax inspectors. Instead, you go outside for some air. Rome in the late afternoon is less chaotic. Not peaceful, don't be silly, but the energy is different. People move slower, less yelling, more quiet grumbling. The sun, now slanting lower, casts long shadows across cobblestones and statues, turning every cracked column into a dramatic silhouette. You walk to the nearest market lane, hoping to find something edible that doesn't scream, crunch, or judge you morally. The vendor stalls are still open, though some are closing up early in anticipation of a minor festival tonight. Something about Venus, love, and cabbages. You pick up a stale loaf and a questionable pear, pay with the last copper coin you forgot you had in your sandal, and find a low wall to sit on. Across from you, a group of young men are arguing over a tooth. One insists it belonged to Hannibal. The others say it's from a goat. Either way, it's being sold for 8 denarii and a loaf of barley bread. You nibble the edge of your pear. It's soft. Fermented almost. You pretend it's wine. Then comes the parade. Yes, a literal parade of gladiators. Apparently, one of the games has been rescheduled for tomorrow, and the fighters are being marched through the streets like demigods on holiday. Bronze armor glints, muscles ripple, sandals stomp. Everyone around you cheers, except you. You're too tired to cheer, too full of fig fragments, bad poetry, and supernatural trauma. You clap politely and hope that counts. One of the gladiators winks at you, or blinks, hard to tell. Behind them, a man plays the double pipes. Children throw flower petals and bread crusts. A noblewoman waves from a litter carried by 6 slaves and flanked by dancers dressed as satyrs. One of them trips. No one reacts. You watch it all with the detached serenity of someone who's been spiritually mauled by civic duties and fermented cheese. Here's the thing. Gladiators weren't just blood sport celebrities. They were cultural icons, both admired and pitied. Historians still argue whether their lives were more enviable or tragic. But on this street, right now, they're legends. You finish your pear and toss the stem into the gutter. It's immediately eaten by a passing dog. The sun sinks lower, shadows stretch. People begin lighting lanterns. You get up slowly and start walking home. The streets are mostly empty now. A group of drunk men sing a war chant with all the accuracy of a broken lyre. A woman scolds her husband for bringing the wrong fish. A teenager pretends to be Caesar using a stick as a scepter. You salute him. He salutes back. You pass the fountain. The lion's head is still wearing a wig. It now has earrings. Progress. At your doorstep, you pause. You're not exactly glad to be home, but you are unmistakably still alive. And in ancient Rome, that's saying something. You step back into your apartment just as twilight settles over the city, draping Rome in a dusty violet hue that makes even cracked walls and crooked shutters seem poetic. Inside, the air is still warm, but it no longer feels like punishment. Just persistence. The clay walls glow faintly in the lantern light, and you sit on your mat with the slow grace of a centurion who's fought one too many spoons. Tiberius chirps from his perch near the window. He's wrapped a piece of linen around his shoulders like a miniature senator. You don't ask. You just nod, and he nods back. There's an understanding now between you. Shared trauma. You remove your sandals. One squeaks, the other sighs, and set them beside the bucket that still contains the rat. You'll deal with that tomorrow, or never. Outside, a breeze stirs. It carries with it a mix of scents. Roasting chestnuts, someone's attempt at fish stew, and the lingering perfume of the parade dancers. A dog barks, once half-heartedly, as if fulfilling a legal obligation. A drunk man yells, "Mars sees all!" and is promptly shushed by an unseen chorus of tired neighbors. You light a stub of a candle, set it by your Larry's, and whisper, "Still alive." It feels like a triumph. Then comes the sound of knocking. Not your door, someone else's. A few rooms over, followed by a scream, then laughter, then applause. You press your ear to the wall. Nothing intelligible, just life. Rome's endless, nocturnal performance. The city is a play with too many actors and no script, and you've been on stage since dawn. You lie back, arms folded beneath your head, and listen. Through the window, the buzz of nighttime Rome. Not quiet exactly, but gentler, like the city is humming to itself. A child giggles somewhere. A pan flutters to the ground. A merchant yells, "One more melon," like it's a threat. You begin to fade. Then something stirs in the hallway. Footsteps, rustling fabric, a whisper. He forgot the offering again. You sit up with a groan, reach for the half-eaten pear core you stashed in a cloth, and toss it out the window toward the shrine down the alley. You hear it land with a squish. You hope that counts, and that's when it happens. The building shudders. It's not an earthquake, not this time. It's your upstairs neighbor jumping, not falling, jumping, possibly dancing, possibly possessed. You hear a tambourine. You cover your face with a pillow and make a sound like an injured jug. Rome does not rest. Still you try. You ease into your mat, curl onto your side, and exhale. The moonlight paints a soft stripe across the floor. Tiberius curls up beside the clay shrine, snoring softly. A final gust of air sweeps the shutters open for a moment, just long enough to hear one more chant, one more cart creak, one more owl hoot in the distance. And despite it all, despite the baths and bureaucrats, the feathers and fermentations, the trials and tiles, you smile, because you made it. One whole Roman Tuesday, and you are still here, still breathing, still mildly damp. The city murmurs on like a lullaby in a language you barely understand. You let it carry you, let it hold you, let it fade. Like smoke from a late-night incense stick, drifting gently into whatever dreams are brave enough to survive ancient Rome. Now let your breathing slow. You've trudged through a whole Roman day, from slippery streets to smoky temples, from feather-sorting shops to gladiator parades. The clamor of the city is softening now, dulled by the hush of nightfall. You've faced shouting tax collectors, dodged rogue roof tiles, and tried, heroically, to nap in a tenement where silence is rarer than sunshine in the underworld. But you made it. You've worn the dust of Rome on your tunic, eaten questionable cheese under suspicious stars, and whispered to old gods who may or may not be listening. And now the walls are cooling, the lamps are dim, even the roosters are sleeping, at least for now. You've done enough, more than enough. Let your limbs relax, heavy against the mattress or floor or blanket wrapped around you. Let your jaw unclench. You don't have to translate Latin anymore tonight. You don't have to remember which incense offends which spirit. You don't even have to worry about surprise plumbing inspections or the location of your last sandal. Just let yourself drift. Drift past the humming pipes and quiet songs, past the candlelit alleys and fading frescoes, into a slower world where even Rome must slumber. A world of gentle echoes and flickering stars, where dreams carry you not to the circus or the census, but to still water, soft grass, and a sky wide enough to forget everything for a little while. You are safe now. You've survived Tuesday. Sleep, friend. Sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.